you remember during the rule of Ahab and Jezebel how bad it was in Israel? Anybody ever read about that? It's pretty bad, eh? Whose God was greater all the time? Right? Was it Baal that was greater all the time? No, of course not. Then why did it take so long for the confrontation on Mount Carmel to happen? God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Yet the supremacy of God is exalted in one moment much greater than in another moment. And for the bulk of that period, for years, the prophets were in hiding. They were being put to death. They were being chased. What's the difference? The difference isn't God. The supremacy of God is constant. Always the same. It's the people. It's the people. The manifestation of the glory, the supremacy, the majesty of God was dependent upon not the temperature of God's glory, but the temperature of faith in the people. And so as things begin to get worsen, they begin to, hey, what's going on? They begin to gradually wake up. They begin to get nervous. They begin to say, hey, there's something wrong here. They begin to get desperate. They began to get hungry. God resists the proud, but He gives grace to the humble. The desperation began to pull on the reins of heaven. They didn't know how this worked, but eventually, now listen, Elijah was always a significant prophet. What was the trigger that gave him permission to go to Mount Carmel? Was God just sitting there, yeah, you can suffer a little longer. Suffer a little longer. No, there's no reason for the suffering. It's just, a certain amount of time. God does not delight in suffering. The conditions of suffering create dependency upon God in the people. And as that increases, it pulls on the reins of heaven. And when there's enough of a threshold that's crossed, then the word of the Lord comes to Elijah. Not because God suddenly gets stronger, but God suddenly is enabled by the desperation of the people. Now, in that case, it's desperation. In our case, it ought to be faith. But faith and desperation sometimes go hand in hand. Yeah. Not because that's God's idea, but that's our idea. Because it's hard to lean into faith unless you're desperate. Right. You can without being desperate, but it's harder. How can we change Canada? How can we change Alberta? How can we change this city? We have the reins of power.